have Erin Fuller. Erin is the president of MCI USA, and a job in which she oversees the full service management of 55 national and global nonprofits and associations. You also take care of the consulting business for your firm, so we're anxious to talk with you about your career path. Clearly, since your time at AU, you've done amazing things, and we'd love to share with the folks listening today and watching this about your career path and how you've gone from a graduate student at AU to the president of a large company.
Sure. Hi, Vicki. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me today, and happy to talk about my journey at AU, which started in 1989. I came to AU from Central Massachusetts, a very small town, and thought that I wanted to be involved in politics, and came to AU and did kind of very typical DC college, American University experiences in terms of having some internships on the Hill while working on campus as well. The things that launched me into my career, one was definitely some on-campus experience and some was off-campus. So on campus, I was an RA for a couple of years at AU, but I also worked during the school year for the Office of Summer Housing. My first job was with the American Medical Student Association, and that was a great opportunity because the members and leaders of AMSA were all around my age. And so my young age at the time was not viewed as a liability. As you can imagine, everybody involved in AMSA was incredibly smart and really passionate about healthcare and healthcare access. And then I had what I call my quarter life crisis, where I thought, gosh, do I really want to be in nonprofits? So I ended up working for Andersen Consulting, which is now Accenture, for a year, where I found out very quickly that yes, the association and nonprofit community is definitely where I belonged. It was definitely kind of a whiplash experience to go from 30 people with a potluck culture to 62,000 people globally with a very strong happy hour and cocktail consumption culture. And so, and I went into Andersen thinking that I would do consulting for government and nonprofits. And within my first month, an organizational chart was sent around where those areas were blacked out on it. And I took it to the managing partner, and I said, what does this mean? Like, oh, well, we're not going to engage in those services anymore. So I found out very quickly that was probably not for me. But I will say that experience was incredibly valuable because I think in any industry, we all want what we don't have. And so within the nonprofit industry, the fact that I had worked for, at the time, a Big Six management consulting firm was kind of like my additional graduate degree. It gave me a lot of credibility. And as a result, my next job out of leaving Andersen was as the executive director of a small research foundation for the Community Associations Institute. And so I worked at Community Associations Institute for 4 years. While I was there, I also ended up having the responsibility for all of our events, our credentialing and professional development courses, as well as our research. And at the end of my tenure there, I was hired to be the CEO for the National Association of Women Business Owners in 2002. And NABO, as they're known, had just hired an association management company to manage them. At the same time, they were hiring for a new CEO. And so I joined a very small association management company, about 25 people, and had really amazing opportunities with NABO. And as a result, I became president of the company in 2009. The longtime founder and still CEO of the company was gracious enough to give me that role. And I worked with a number of other groups, the Center for Women's Business Research. I served as the executive CEO of the Alliance for Women in Media, formerly American Women in Radio and Television, for 3 years. And ultimately, I really started just focusing on growing our company. So as I mentioned, when I started there in 2002, it was 25. Probably when I became president, we were around 50. And in 2014, we were probably about 85. And in 2014, I was at a retreat. I'm a fellow within the American Society of Association Executives. And I basically went back to my business partner and friend, Tom Gibson, and said, I think that there may be an opportunity for us to sell our company, which was not something that we had ever thought about. And so in early 2015, our company, which is called Coulter, was acquired by a global company called MCI Group. And MCI Group is based out of Geneva, Switzerland. We have 61 offices in 31 countries, and now 6 of those offices are in the United States.
So much to talk about there. So let's dig into, I know now that the School of Public Affairs has really invested in nonprofit management. Is one of our highly ranked concentrations, and it's something that we put a lot of emphasis on. But that wasn't the case back when you were going through your undergraduate degree and your MPA here. How did you kind of chart a path into an area that may not have been an area of concentration in the school?
I would say quantitative methods and overall writing and project management. That ultimately, I think, is what benefited me. And what I studied, although I still have kind of a passion for policy, it was ultimately not as important. But I can say that my budgeting class, for instance, I remember every week Dr. Hyde giving us we had a town, and you were a town manager, and it said, okay, you have to put in 4 pools and 3 golf courses and whatever. And every week he'd say, okay, 5% budget cut, or there's a drought and water prices have gone up 20%. I mean, every week there would be some new scenario, and you'd go back to this wretched spreadsheet and you would sit there and reconfigure. And I can tell you right now, in this era of COVID-19, that's exactly what I'm doing. Every day I am building different forecasts and scenarios based on what pops up. And so I think that, I still have my statistics textbooks on my bookshelf in my office. If we were in my actual office, you'd be able to see them behind me.
Right now people are sitting and watching this, probably thinking about whether or not now's the time to choose to go to grad school. And I would be curious what you think of that, Erin. If you would find this to be a good time, or what they might be thinking about, or factors they would use in deciding to pursue a graduate degree at this time.
Sure. And, I did graduate in the early 90s, where it was not a good economic time. It was very, very challenging to find a job, and to find, I would say, a job at above subsistence level pay, for sure. It was a huge challenge for me and my classmates. So although I certainly can't identify with being in the situation right now, I can empathize to a certain extent. And it's scary just in general to graduate and be out there and be making all of these important decisions. I always tell people when they ask me, do it early. As someone who's a single mom of 2 kids, I have such respect. Even when I was in grad school, I remember being in awe of the parents in my classes, especially through the KEY program, like people who were older students who were working really intense full-time jobs. But I think that in terms of why I selected it, first of all, I'm madly in love with Washington, D.C., right? And I knew I wanted to stay in D.C. And at the time when I looked at other schools and the programs, AU's was and continues to be ranked among the top in the nation. So to me, this was an incredible opportunity to get into one of, I think at the time, one of the top 3 or top 5 schools for public administration.
I know so often you've provided internships and jobs for AU graduates over the years, and also in addition to jobs, just really sound advice. And I know you're particularly versed in discussions about networking, about how people can use different networking tools like informational interviews, really get the most out of the market and really think about their future. And I'd just be curious at this time to provide our, students and soon-to-be graduates some little insight into how tools you think they might use and how they might use something like an informational interview to help them.
Well, I would say before the informational interview even starts, get your life together, get your social media and your email address and everything consistent and professionalized. I think that the first thing I do when someone reaches out is as I'm talking to them, I'm opening LinkedIn, right, and looking real time at their resume, their accomplishments, their connections in common. I always joke, if you have some dumb email address from your younger days that has a family nickname or the name of a pet or something else, this is the time to create the very boring erin.fuller@gmail.com, right? So, those are all things that, again, are our first impression for sure. I get a lot of requests and I always try to honor them or connect them with someone who's really the right person for them to talk to. And I think there's just a real difference, if you go on first of all, do research, right? So don't get on the phone with me and tell me you have no idea what association management is or act surprised when I go through the fact that we work with all these organizations, because there's really no excuse for that. If I've looked at their bio on LinkedIn, I would assume that they've done the same thing. And then I think that you really want to figure out what information you want, right? So you shouldn't show up to the call and expect me to drive it, right? So and I wouldn't have more than 3 or 4 questions, but can you think of 3 people that I should talk to? Where do you think the bluest ocean is for me to look for opportunities? I mean, there are definitely ways to approach that are truly informational. If there is a position open on the person's website, then I think it's important. It's appropriate to say, oh, and I saw that there's this role open. Could you connect me with the person that's hiring? But understanding that informational interview is not the job interview. But if you make me a fan, then I'm going to feel invested in your success. And so I'm really going to want to try to shepherd your resume to the right person in my organization or other organizations. If you go on my LinkedIn and you see that I'm directly connected to somebody else who is looking for a great job, I mean, that's the kind of thing that I'm so happy to do. It's really easy, but it's all about making it really easy for me to get that done, right? So the less work I have to do to become an advocate for you, I think is really important.
So Erin, can you tell me how your leadership style and what you're doing right now to maintain your organization during this pandemic?
But it's hard to be, it's the leader, but then every day I'm looking for a meme to post and have people comment on it. We've hosted 4 virtual happy hours so far for our talents with ridiculous themes. And then I've been doing walks with me throughout the week. So yesterday we had 8 people who went ahead and took a 20-minute break, and we just walked. I used Microsoft Teams and had it on the audio, and we just all took a walk together. And I've created a whole thing called MCI at Home on Microsoft Teams, which is the virtual platform we use among, I think, everybody on the planet at this point. And so we have different channels there. One are homeschooling resources. One is making sure we're keeping our COVID-19 information up to date. But then some of them are just general, and we just try to post some fun things or informative things that are going on. But I'm so inspired. I have to say, it's such a great opportunity to see how people engage.